Hello, my name is John Didi, professor of political science at the community colleges of Baltimore County and local media political analyst. Welcome to the Maryland State Politics and Government podcast on Substack. Today, I am talking with Maryland State Senator Ben Brooks. Good morning.
Good morning, John. How are you?
I am doing well. I am hopefully done shoveling, but I don't know where it's all going to go.
I wish I could say that. Got a bit of a ways to go yet.
That's true. It's the cold that gets to you after a while.
Indeed.
My first question today is what is your number one goal for this session?
Okay, this session, I've got a bill, and what the bill does is try to do something about the ever increasing utility costs. That was a major challenge for us during the previous session. And we need to do things to try to mitigate or reduce the impact that it's having on ratepayers. This bill is called what I call my GETS bill, grid enhancement technology. And what the bill does, it makes sure that transmission companies applying for a CPCN to construct overhead transmission, they must first provide evidence that they considered at least a few factors, because we want to mitigate those particular costs. They before they run these 500 kilovolt transmission lines, we want to make sure that they are exercising things like reconductoring. They are choosing alternative routes. They are factoring in ratepayer costs, resource adequacy, and also energy efficiency demands and the environment before they erect those particular towers. Because right now we know that the way the system is that the companies are rewarded for installing towers. They get to amortize that over the life of the towers, and that can be 40 or 50 years. And when it's amortized, that's like we're paying for a mortgage 40 or 50 years. So that helps that ups the cost. In addition, there is they are guaranteed a return on investment. So we need to start factoring in things to help make this particular commodity more affordable. Now, right now, some folks want to, we do blame PJM for some of this. We're part of this RTO, Regional Transmission Organization. Now, their charge is one, reliability, and two, sustainability. Well, affordability is not part of that lexicon. So we need to have some conversations with our federal partners to make sure that affordability is considered because they are regulated by, PJM is regulated by FERC. So that doesn't give us a whole bunch of power. We can complain, but we don't have any regulatory power there to force them to do anything. Now, one of the benefits of being part of an RTO, and that's 13 states plus the district, is that we're all getting our energy from the same pool. We're all drawing water from that same bathtub. And which means, even though like Maryland, we are net importers, we're only generating 6% of what we're consuming. So we're importing 40%. Yeah. And right now, our biggest generator is Calvert Cliffs. Two reactors, but 40% of the electrons for the state come from Calvert Cliffs. So if we, which means that we're in a position where we have to import that 40%. There's been arguments that we need additional generation here, and that would be ideal. But at the same time, would it be more expensive to generate that here by adding additional generation assets or importing it from Pennsylvania? We got to weigh those two options. I think it would put us in a better negotiating position if we were generating more here, but we got to look at the overall cost to the ratepayers, because right now what we want to do is try to mitigate or reduce the impact of those particular costs. And as we say, try to transition from coal to less CO2 emitting fuels, there's a cost that is associated with that. But as we know, coal is the dirtiest fuel that you can use. And here again, as we make that transition, we need to make sure we do it in a strategic manner so that we can not cause tremendous interruptions to supply or those spikes in costs to the ratepayers. So yeah, so this bill is going to lend itself to trying to at least get some of those costs down and making sure that the utility companies are doing their part in trying to reduce those costs to the ratepayers.
I definitely wish you well with that. There's one thing I want to bring up regarding this and have you comment on. One of the issues regarding the energy thing is everyone wants to go into AI. Everyone wants to do electric vehicles, which require a lot of electricity. At the same time, and this is where I was puzzled by, when you take your car for a repair, the car gets fixed and then you pay. If a contractor comes into your house and does something, it's half down, half later. With this money we gave the BG&E to do upgrades, which we would have to do anyways, why give them all the money up front before they finish the work or even start the work?
I agree. We're going to have to look at that. The thing is that, they are what we call regulated monopolies. Their charge is to make sure that energy is always available. We 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 pay them, I guess you could say, upfront to make sure that it's going to be there. I think in a sense we're being placed behind the eight ball. I think normally there was a situation where they would have to do what we call a rate case. You go out there and you do the infrastructure upgrades, and then you come back to the PSC, and then you plead your case. They'll review it and make sure everything is accurate. Then they will grant you that particular increase. Right now, we that definitely needs to be reviewed again to make sure that the ratepayers' interest is at heart. I mean, with the with the ever escalating costs. And mind you, I know that there are going to be increases in commodity. That's normal, supply and demand. But the my a greater concern is the T&D, that's transmission and distribution, those costs, and that is John, that is volumetric. So those costs, they go up based on your use, and they don't come down, they don't fluctuate, they go up and they stay up. And I just think that paying for a house for 40 or 50 years just doesn't, it has limited appeal, because when you look at the amount of interest that's paid on that, and here again, this is amortized. So yeah, we need to take another look at that, and I think we will.
It came out last week, and I think most people looked at it and breathed a sigh of relief more than anything because there was a lot of anticipation, a lot of bad stuff. One of the issues that has come up regarding a lot of criticism related to the budget is the blueprint, in part because K through 12 enrollments are down, and we're going to spend more on K through 12. And there's a lot of money going into this. I've talked to county officials, and they kind of say, we don't know where the money's going to come from down the road. What if you had a chance to kind of do your own tweaking to the blueprint and basically do what you think is necessary? What would you suggest to be done to kind of deal with some of these problems?
Okay, I'll start off by saying it is funded up until 2027. So by FY 2028, most blueprint print formulas, teachers' compensation, collaboration, time, early childhood expansion, community schools, career pathway will be fully or near fully phased in. So the focus then shifts from startup to sustaining. And now these reforms at scale with, I guess we need predictable funding. Yeah, now the long-term fiscal stability that we're talking about those out years, projection reflects like rising cost by enrollment trends. We've got inflation in educator salaries, health and pension obligations, and then maintenance of effort, requirements. So we know that those costs are going to be coming, but I think we're just going to have to factor that in. Through it's going to be part of local priorities and of course state priorities. So we're just going to have to gain the funding to do that. Yeah. Now, the funds that we got from the federal pandemic relief will expire, and 2080 and beyond is going to rely entirely on state and local revenues. So we know that is coming. That is coming. So we're just going to have to prepare for that.
My next question centers on something that's got a lot of attention recently, and that is the talk about doing redistricting, reapportionment, whatever. They came out with a new map last week, and the House is going to push forward with it. Do you agree with Senator Ferguson as far as what he feels should be done? Do you feel it should get a hearing and vote in the Senate? Where do you come out as far as this whole situation?
Well, yeah, we've heard a lot of talk about that. Let me put it this way, John. We've got 8 congressional districts in Maryland. 7 of those are controlled by Democrats. So if my math is correct, that's 87.5%. So there have been an argument advanced of fairness. So I think that argument would dissipate with any level of scrutiny. If we are we saying that we don't want the other side to have any representation? And plus, why would we support something that we abhor? So I'm still waiting for the folks who are pushing this to explain or answer those particular questions to me. Because if we're talking about something other than fairness, then validate the argument. But right now, I don't see it. I think about California. California's got 52 congressional districts. And they've got a commission who draws the maps and whatnot. Well, here in Maryland, we draw the maps. And plus the fact too that I think that everybody needs representation. So I'm trying to see how one district can have that kind of impact on 7. So once that argument has been made to me, then perhaps I could give that particular thought more consideration. But right now, I'm sticking with my president.
It is a political battle, unfortunately.
Yes.
My next question centers on something that has been talked about recently. When we think about spending of money, people are always talking about looking for or believing they see waste, fraud, and abuse. 2 of the most well-respected people in the state when it comes to rooting out waste, fraud, and abuse are Isabel Cumming and the former Baltimore County Inspector General Kelly Madigan. Do you think the state needs an inspector general to kind of get to the waste, fraud, and abuse and do things, do some investigative things, maybe in some ways to reassure taxpayers, hey, here's your money, it's being spent right, or here's some people that can go out there and find some stuff that shouldn't be happening?
Right. I think that, but there are audits already being done by the Department of Office of Internal Audits, right now, and if we're saying that we need an IG, I mean, like Baltimore County, we don't have an IG for schools per se, but that there's an audit that's being done by a Department of Legislative Services, you know. So I think what you're going to have is a lot of redundancy, but at what cost? You know, this, the county saying right now, they need additional funding from the government. They're running short on funding. They're going to have to cut, so why spend that additional money or have that additional redundancy when that particular service is already being handled at no additional cost to the county. So I mean, I know there are arguments for and arguments against. I know some of the arguments for it is as restoring public trust, bipartisan, and separation of power. But then some folks believe that the state, the Baltimore County schools and the state should be a quasi operation. You don't want it to be influenced by politics. So I think as many arguments for it, I think I can find probably just as many arguments against it. So, but if you're looking at it from a budgetary perspective, I think we're going to be spending money that perhaps we could best use elsewhere. And if there are things, I know there are a couple of things that were alluded to that that the audit perhaps they said that the audit probably would have, I don't know whether it would have prevented, but one of them leading back to the ransomware situation. I don't know how an IG would have caught that, and I went back and I looked, and there were 18 cases of payroll fraud, they said, 8 cases of falsifying records, and 2 cases of theft. When you look at in the total scheme of things, you're talking about what, 2.4 or $2.8 billion organization. So let's if we want, and I'm thinking too that the current IG saying that she would need at least 6 more IGs to be able to perform those services. So, and we're saying now we've got a shortage of funds in the county. I'm just trying to fiscally wrap my mind around this. So, but if and if those and that information I'm talking about the what has been revealed that came from the existing auditors. I think they're very capable of doing that. So I'm going to need some additional arguments about why we need to do the IG. That's from my perspective.
Next question I want to ask is something that has a national in some ways, but the concern it could happen here. What has been going on in Minneapolis recently with ICE? And the pictures on Saturday, the best way to describe it, horrifying, also a lot of inaccuracies, people saying this is what happened. Then the video, you see something else. What do you feel ICE's role should be? And if they were to come, and do you have a concern that they could end up coming to a place like the Baltimore area to do a variety of things?
ICE's role should be immigration enforcement. That's it. Not murder, not brutalization, not using kids as hostages. There were 2 people murdered in Minnesota murdered, and this is not what we signed up for. This is not their responsibility. And I think what Congress should do is restrict all funding going to ICE until that kind of mayhem, that kind of murder ceases. It's ridiculous. And for anybody to try to justify that type of brutality, actually that type of murder, I think it's unconscionable. Yeah, and if they come to Maryland, yeah, we're going to have to obey the law, but we don't have to tolerate that kind of nonsense. And I think people have the right to exercise their First Amendment rights, and that to protest and address and redress grievances. And that should not wind up with somebody being executed in the streets. How can you call yourself being trying to uphold law when you are breaking the law? So,
Last question I want to ask is related to the following. I want to introduce it this way. Former Speaker Jones decided to step down, and she is part of your ticket in the 10th district. I think a lot of people have been offering a lot of prayers and well wishes. Hopefully things work out for her. Any idea how do you think she will be continuing to serve as far as running? How is she doing? Because I think a lot of people are concerned for herself and her health.
I appreciate the concern, and yeah, I'm planning on having some conversations with her this week, you know, and what I'll do as soon as she make any disclosure, I would definitely share that with you. Yeah, I try to maintain her privacy and disclose the things that she has given me the authority to disclose.
Okay. I want to thank you again for your time. Good luck this legislative session. I know energy and the budget is definitely going to be something that's going to get a lot of your attention.
Thanks, John. I appreciate the interview.
You're welcome. Have a good day.
Likewise here.